Hey everyone, and welcome back. I've got a little bit of a different video today. Not like super different, but it's still something a little bit different than what I have done in the past. You might have noticed some Neverwinter content creators posted a poll on their YouTube pages a couple weeks ago asking how you felt about Mod 16 in general. And that was sort of an experiment that we did whenever we were talking about the podcast that we did with Galactic. We said, oh, we should post a poll and see what people actually think, because there's this whole thing going around that Julia, the community manager, has said that the majority of people seem to think that Mod 16 is good and they like it. And as you can clearly see by the poll results that I'm going to show you, that is not the case. However, obviously this does not account for the entire player base, and this is in no way a direct attack at Julia. Like I've mentioned before, I love Julia, so this is simply just a presentation of facts in a relatively neutral manner. The content creators that participated in this poll experiment were myself, obviously, and then Galactic Underwear, Nova, Unforgiven / Northside, and Reiner. Sorry. I gotta pronounce his name right because he corrected everyone in the podcast that we did, so now I gotta make sure it's right. Reiner, right? I know he's gonna watch this and comment saying I said it completely wrong. I know it. I'm sorry. So what I did was I went through all of the comments that everyone made on everyone's poll, and that took forever, by the way. And it was really interesting because on some channels the comments were way more negative than on other channels. So I tried to pick some of the top comments, not necessarily by votes, but by the ones that I thought were the most insightful or brought up a good point. And that was actually really hard to do on a couple channels because everyone was just bashing the community manager, bashing the game, bashing the company. And that's not the ideals that I want to promote on my channel, so I don't want to pick those comments. However, I do have some comments that I want to talk about and some points that I want to bring up that some people in those comments have brought up. So I am just going to start with my channel because the comments on my channel are generally more positive than the other channels, and that's probably because that the content that I like to create is generally more positive than the other channels. I also just want to start off the video on a good note and then get into the more critical comments later on. So first up we have a comment from Horned Owl. And this is a pretty long detailed comment, but mainly the point that I want to point out is that they are happy with Mod 16 in general, but there is a lot of things that need work. They pointed out that the removal of buffs is going to be a good thing, and they actually used one of my older videos as an example of this, the Strahd insta-kill that I had from back when I streamed on Twitch, and we basically killed Strahd within a few seconds. And obviously that's not how the game is meant to be played. It was fun, but it's not how the game was meant to be played. And so that kind of change is something that the game needed, I think. However, that doesn't mean that I have to like it, you know? Like, there's a difference between knowing something has to happen and liking that something has to happen. Next up, we have a super long comment by xcribs. The main thing that I wanted to look at here is in the last paragraph, where they said that they think that Cryptic has bit off more than they can chew for a single update, and that is something that I definitely agree with. And there's a lot of people who have said the same thing, that they think that it should have been separated into 2 mods so that there's not this huge everything is changing all at once, because the way that things are right now, it's not exactly manageable to basically recreate a whole new game in this time. Yes, they've been working on it for a long time, but just throwing all of this at us at once is not good for them or us. They also point out that the current way that weapon enchantments work is not a good idea, and I definitely can agree with that, because right now the weapon enchantments basically do the exact same thing. They all give a flat % damage bonus that's the same for each one of them, and then they have like a secondary little effect or something that makes them different from each other. While the flat damage bonus being the same makes it so that you can use any enchantment based on whatever effect it is, that itself is okay. I just think that the actual effects that make each one unique are not very powerful at all, and make it so that it doesn't really matter a whole lot which enchantment you choose. And that's the same for a whole lot of aspects of Mod 16 that I don't really want to get into right this second, but like same thing can be applied to boons and feats and so on. It doesn't feel like a lot of your changes actually mean something. Next up we have a comment from Damien, and this is not necessarily something related to Mod 16, but a concept in general. and that is that people are just too negative and aren't open-minded to change. And this is something that I've been saying a lot. A lot of the people who are complaining are just complaining to complain without any real basis behind what they're complaining about. For example, if you go look at the comments on any of our polls, you will see that there are some people who are just saying, I hate this game, the devs are stupid. And then they don't give any actual reasoning as to why that is or what can be done to fix it. Which, in my opinion, if you're going to be critical of something, you have to do so constructively, otherwise your opinion is just going to be swept under the rug like a grain of salt. To piggyback on that is another comment from Henrique, I think is how you pronounce that name. I might have really butchered that. And that is somebody complaining about people complaining about something before it's ready. To an extent, that's basically what I just said, but you do have to be constructive about it, and this is what this person is saying. They actually brought up something like, they don't like the way that clerics are kind of like bards, and they think that the buffs did break the game, make it harder to create new content, and they also touched on they appreciate their efforts, but they know that things aren't perfect, and there's still a lot of things that need changed. So that's basically how I feel about it. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, but the overall general premise of rebuilding the core aspects of the game is something that I think would have been necessary at some point. It's just the way that they do it that matters. And lastly, we have a comment from Macy, and they list some pros and cons to Mod 16 here. Like, they like the level increase in the new campaign, and I definitely agree with that because it gives us a lot more stuff to do, and the campaign is awesome. I love the campaign. That's probably the best part of Mod 16, in my opinion. The campaign is fun to play through. It's not time-gated, so you can do it whenever you want. And the actual worlds are beautiful, and the quests aren't super boring. You have a lot of newer type mechanics, like you have an ability that you get for certain quests that goes on your F key, and that can turn enemies into fish, or like do an AoE attack around you with a special sword ability thing. I don't want to give too many spoilers, even though I've done it all on stream if you've watched. But there are quite a few of those. And I think adding more special mechanics like that to quests is a way to make it more engaging and more fun for people. And if they continue to do that and add a bunch of new things to the quests and stuff, that is going to be a really good idea. However, this person said they don't agree with the removal of AoE from the DPS part of Cleric, like the Chains of Blazing Light, which is, I agree with that as well. And then healing, they said that healing feels pretty lackluster. My favorite kinds of comments are those that are both positive and negative, or constructive in some way. Like, I don't like comments that are just completely praising the game 100% of the way, but I also don't like comments that are completely trashing on the game 100% of the way. You need to find a happy medium of that, and if you do that, people are going to take you more seriously. Alright, next up we have some comments from Galactic's channel, and those ones were actually the hardest for me to pick from because a lot of the people there were focusing on just the aspect that 90% of the people like the changes instead of the overall Mod 16 part. But I am going to do one comment about that because it is something that I find interesting. Like, this comment is from Once Upon a Mid, and they're just questioning what source the 90% figure was derived from, and if we're being honest, I have not personally seen Julia say that 90% of the people like the changes, or that the majority of the people like the changes. Like, I'm not saying that everyone is lying, I'm just not saying that I personally have not seen her say that. Anyway, back to the actual topic. They asked if the sources are the ones that are in controlled environments, like the forums and heavily moderated locations such as the Discord and Reddit. And what they should have done is taken into account all of the things on Twitter, Facebook, and things that are not moderated that don't have people from Cryptic or volunteer moderators even standing around trying to stop people from being too negative. And if that were the case, if they took feedback from those sorts of sources, the actual overall response they would have gotten would have been far more accurate. Next comment is from somebody named Tipsy Drow, and they basically said that they don't like that they removed build diversity from the game, and they standardized stats in a non-D&D fashion. And this is one topic that a lot of people touched on, that they don't like the build diversity that was removed and the lack of choice that people now have. And I'm going to be saying this a bunch because a lot of people said it, but it's true, and it's something that I absolutely agree with. I loved the complexity that the game had before, with all the extra feats and the boons and so on, and that is gone now, just like the refinement system that was changed before. Next up is just 3 people who are extremely unhappy with Mod 16. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm sure you can all guess what they say because you probably agree with them, so I'll just leave them there. Next up, we've got some comments from Northside, or Unforgiven as some of you may know him, his channel. The first comment is from Diamond Feather, someone who also makes Neverwinter content, and she basically said that she understands it's not a finished product, but if it goes live the way it is right now, she's not going to like that at all and will end up leaving the game. And the main point I wanted to touch on here is that she thinks it'd be really good if they delayed Module 16 for a couple months and make a better version of it. And I also agree with that. I was hoping that they would delay the release further, because I think all of us can agree that we would rather wait longer to access content instead of having broken content or unpolished content handed to us on day one. Next comment is from Wizard Level 80. They are not happy at all with the changes, and a lot of their friends gave up and already quit, and the combat system feels really slow and not like Neverwinter anymore at all. And surprisingly, I also agree with that. The combat does feel very slow, and it doesn't feel at all like it did before. Like, I played Mod 16 for a long time, and then the other day I went back on live and did a Cradle in a Castle Ravenloft, and it was just so much more engaging, the combat, and a lot more fun. Like, the faster pace is really what set Neverwinter apart, and that is basically going out the window as of right now. Next comment is from Dantes. They like a lot of the new stuff, but they don't like that there's not very much choice available, like 5 feats and so on. And like I said, I've already touched on this, but I just want to reiterate that a lot of people feel the same way. Like, even if they doubled that amount to 10 feats, that would be more in line with what we had before, because you got, I think it was 6 from the feat tree, and then another 5-ish from the heroic feats, so that's about 11. So if we had 10 feats, I think that would be a pretty reasonable middle ground for customization. Like, yes, we would have less options, but we'd still have around the same amount of actual feats chosen. And that number 11 is from if you actually max out them all instead of putting like 1 point in each one, you know? So the next up is a comment from Noel, and they think that they reached way beyond their means from creating this module. And that is something that somebody else said before. They don't like that they completely restructured the game, but it is going to be a completely new game, even if they do manage to fix all the bugs, and that is going to be a lot of change for people to get used to. And lastly is a comment from Frozen Rare, and this person says that they do like the changes. They like the level 80 new gear, new zones, and so on, but they don't like the changes to the clerics. And I can understand that, because the cleric's playstyle is 100% different than before. They used to be basically buffers only, unless you were playing a DPS DO or something, but all of that is gone now because there basically are no buffs or debuffs anymore. There's no rotation that you need to figure out, no theory crafting or anything like that. And a lot of people played Cleric because of that, and since that's completely gone, their reason for playing Cleric is also gone. And now we're going to move on to Nova's channel. Nova's channel was also pretty hard to find comments for because a lot of people were just bashing on the company and the game in general, but Philip says that they destroy the concepts as build, variety, and knowledge of mechanics and so on in just one day. I mean, obviously it wasn't in one day, this was something that's been in the works for a while, but to us, the players, it is something that changed in just one day, and a lot of the core aspects of the game are different. Next up is a comment from Aaron. He says that a lot of the changes are good, but the main issue is the overall oversimplification. And this is something that is repeated a lot, just like I'm repeating this a lot. People don't like that the complexity is being removed completely. It's being dumbed down completely, and everyone's basically going to be the same. Now, there is another comment that is sort of devil's advocate to this that I'm going to get to later on. Just kidding, it's actually the next one. This one. The sort of devil's advocate comment is the one is from KD, and this person says that anyone who says the build variety is gone is delusional because there was no build variety to begin with. And while that is sort of the case, a lot of people were just following builds on MMO mines, and there was only like a certain few good feats. There was still the option of having the other feats or taking them, that a lot of people use different feats in PvP than in PvE as well. But as far as artifacts, enchantments, weapon set, companions, all of that was the same. There was no variety really in that. And that is something that I can't agree with. And lastly, a comment from J-Mon, and that's basically the same thing. Most games evolve into advancements, but the opposite happened for Neverwinter, who dumbed it down. And that is pretty true. Neverwinter does seem to be going the opposite direction of other games, and on one hand, that could be a good thing because it's setting them apart, but the way that they are setting themselves apart is not a good thing, in my opinion. And lastly, we have comments from Reiner's channel. Reiner's channel had quite a bit of insightful comments, good comments, so I actually did get a good number from his channel. Reiner primarily does informative Neverwinter videos as well, and tries not to show too much bias. He's good at math too, so you should probably subscribe to him. Because I can't do math, so you need to have somebody on your subscriber list that can do math. The first comment on Reiner's channel is from Zane, who says that they're slowing the game down too much. The fast pace is what makes Neverwinter fun, and they should quit copying the other MMOs and do their own thing. Which is basically what has already been said. The game is getting too slow, combat is getting too slow, it's gonna be boring. You should just fix what already exists, update the stuff that already exists. And then Zane also touches on Pve versus Pvp system, that you should just make a totally separate system of PvP that doesn't even use the same sort of powers, or at least they have different effects in PvP. And they have done this to some extent, but it's something that is a little bit awkward because some things get nerfed in PvE because of something that happens in PvP, and that's not really fair. Next comment is from Jason, whose main concern is that the powers, feats, and boons are not unique, and you basically don't really have very many options to choose from. This comment also made me laugh. Like, it's not intended to be funny, but they're neutral about the companion tab, and then they go ahead and say that one fart renders the companions unconscious, and just the way that that's written just sat out there like fact. It was just hilarious to me. I laughed for like 3 minutes about it. Next up is a comment from Burn the Lamb. By the way, I don't know why you're burning lambs, but that's not very nice. Burn's main issue is the slowing down of combat and the long cooldowns, especially when you're soloing stuff. And the fast-paced combat makes Neverwinter special, and the slower combat makes it a drag. And I 100% agree with that. A lot of people are saying this. So they have changed it a little bit, but it's definitely not enough to make it feel like anywhere close to what it was before. Next comment is from Zaminoskali. Zabinos, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. But the main point here is that there's not a lot of choice anymore, and there's not very much customization for builds, yada yada yada. Exact same thing. Then they said that even MOBAs have more theory crafting and choices than Mod 16. Oof. And last but not least, we have a comment from Jonathan, who says that there's good and bad things happening, which I definitely agree with. The main thing here is that you can't make your class the way you want, and D&D doesn't have these restrictions. He says that there's so many options in D&D that it's pretty ridiculous at times, but the game that holds its name like it's part of the D&D world is taking away those options, and that's kind of lame. So again, another comment about the lack of options in regards to building your character. So that's it for all of the comments. This video ended up being a lot longer than I intended. I'm sorry about that. If you watched the whole thing, thank you. Also, here's the results for all the polls again. All of the channels for the content creators who participated in this poll experiment thing are in the description. Please make sure you subscribe to them because they're all cool people, and they deserve far more subscribers. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Oh, wait. But wait! There's more! If you have not already, please enter the giveaway. It ends in a day, I think, for a Glorious Resurgence Epic Mount Pack. Giveaway link is also in the description along with everything else. So now I can leave now that I've said that. Okay, bye.